On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk.
You guys are no longer traditional in
Mm-mm.
how you're operating. You not coming home and saying, okay, this is a part of the pot. Y'all coming home and saying, I want a man that can take care of me just in case I don't want to work, but I want to work. And then I also want the same, I want the same say so in the household. And this is a partnership versus me submitting to him. You can't have both. You got to pick one or the other. And if you
Yeah.
want to have a partnership, then it's a completely different type of relationship than me being a benevolent dictator in so many words, right? But I still have the best interest of our household, in the forefront of my mind.
Our first topic of the night is, do people who marry early become curious? Do people who marry early become curious? I'm going to break this topic down for you guys so you can understand. I'm going to paint the picture for you. So you often have people that get married at a very young age. And these people have not had a chance to experience life, live, whole phase, man phase, whatever you want to call it. They haven't had a chance to experience. And based off a lot of people that I've spoken with, or even just some of the things that I've seen, these people tend to grow curious about what's out there. So the question and the topic for the night is, do people who marry early become curious? I'm coming to you first, Chicago Rilla.
Yeah, man. I think to kick it off, honestly, we have these, anecdotal, where you could point out like, nah, they don't, this, that, and the third. But if you look at the evidence, if you just observing, and I thought about this like in terms of Western culture too. And then I was like, well, does that apply in indigenous cultures? And the obvious answer is yes. People do become curious. You marry early, you become curious. There's certain things in life that you don't get a chance to experience. Now, if you think about in Western culture, you think about what we bombarded with from, advertisement, music, movies. It suggests that, maybe you're missing something. Maybe you want to try something. And I mean, especially how some men are raised, right? Some of us men are raised like there's nothing better than old coochie than new coochie, right? And so, I think people that marry early, you think about the divorce rate, and you think about people who divorce for irreconcilable differences. And I know finance is the number one factor in that, but you also have, women who aren't satisfied, you know what I'm saying? And you have husbands who step out and women who step out, you know what I'm saying? So I do think that people who marry early become curious. Yeah.
Okay. Courtney, do people who marry early become curious?
I totally agree. I think they do. It's the whole idea of the grass is always greener on the other side. So marrying early.
Oh, really?
Really. So yeah, they become curious. But here's the thing: even marrying older, you're still curious. Curiosity is never going to end. As far as with a man, they might be curious about being with another woman. As far as a woman could be the same thing. So curiosity is always going to be there, whether marrying young or marrying old. I know a couple of people that I know that has married young, and it's like, man, I missed out on the single life, and I wonder what could have, should have, would have been. So yeah, curiosity is always going to be there, whether you marry old or marry young. What I would definitely say to those women that are curious, or men, chill out. Grass is not green on the other side. Chill out. And but no, I agree. They do.
Anton, do people who marry early become curious?
No, I don't think so. But I think it's difficult to even have this conversation, and that it just depends on who you are. So first you have to take into consideration that the reason why guys cheat and the reason why women cheat, it's usually two different reasons. Mm-hmm. Guys, usually move based off of ego and, just a moment. Like, it don't really matter how old they are or none of that. And as a person that's, been married for almost 17 years, and I'm 39 years old. And so I've literally been married since I was 22. None of that fazed me. You know what I'm saying? None of it fazed me. So when you also take into consideration the reason why women cheat, they cheat from a completely different reason for a guy. And most of the time, women are, especially married women, they have to be in some way, shape, or form emotionally detached from their current partner and emotionally connected to somebody else in order to maintain a whole nother relationship. So me personally, I think that when you take that into consideration, both of those factors, and then you throw into there a guy that moves based off of his purpose, which in most cases is to make the most money possible, to win in every type of situation. For me, I don't move like that, and that I'm absolutely transparent on how I move. And women, like the whole idea of women is not the thing for me. It's all based off of what it is and what my purpose is at that specific moment. So I don't get curious just based off of the fact that I've been married for a long time. I'm more or less focused on how every situation affects my bag. So it's just not for me. Like once you've seen one, you've seen them all. Like it's not too much difference between all of these chicks out here. Most of them is hood rats, and when you get to a certain level, real talk, most of them are rats. And when you get to a certain level, you got to be careful on what their intentions are, especially when you become a little bit more visible. So I don't subject myself to the idea that certain guys and even certain women that really value or understand what the purpose is of their situation operate out of curiosity just because they got married young. Because I was the person that got married young, and it don't mean nothing to me.
Well, I have a question. So do you call yourself the minority or the majority?
I'm the majority of all of the guys that I know. So like I'll give you an example. I got 3 brothers. None of them ever been divorced. None of them ever been in a sticky situation. I got 9 uncles. None of them ever been divorced. None of them ever been in a sticky situation. My father, like prior to his untimely death, my mom and my father was together for over 30 years. And then she remarried, and it's just dope. So, we've always been taught to be proactive in your thoughts and be absolutely transparent, because the foundation of our relationship is based on the fact that we best friends. So whatever we do and however we move, it's already transparent prior to me doing it. So if I ever find myself in a situation, it very much is intentional, and it very much is a situation in which I'm not worried about my circumstances or situation, and it's not based out of curiosity. I don't move based off of curiosity or instincts. I move based off of intention and how I am at that specific moment.
Okay. Do people who marry early become curious?
Not necessarily. I'm kind of going with what Anton said on this one. I don't think that it necessarily means you're going to become curious just because you marry early. But like Courtney said, curiosity could always be a thing depending on the people. So I think that if you get married for the right reasons and all of these things, maybe you might think about something else, but I don't think it's going to make you step out if you were married and your marriage is built on a solid foundation. I don't think that whether you're young or old matters. Although I have heard that conversation where people are kind of like, oh, you never got to like date freely, or you never got to do this or that. So people are kind of like, oh, you missed out. So people might become curious in that instance, I guess. But I don't really think that it has to do with young or old. I mean, people who are going to cheat or step out are going to do it, whether they're young or old. If they don't have that level of integrity in their relationship.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I think it might be different with genders. A man getting married and a woman getting married is for completely 2 different reasons. So even like with Anton, his marriage is because he had a vision, and marriage lined up with his vision. Women sometimes we get married off emotions, and that emotions can still sink in where they get married at 23. They've had friends from high school still single at 25, and they look at their friends. I've seen it a lot where they're like, oh man, y'all kicking it again. I have this, man. I wish I could. Like that happens with women. And again, because we're typically more emotional. So we lean on, man, I wish I could. I thought I could. Man, I can't. Those are a lot of stuff that happens. And so even looking at divorce, when it's 80% of women divorcing men, And it's usually not on something that was just completely drastic. It's they think they can do better. They think they wish they could have, would have, should have. So a lot of relationships that fail because women think they can do better or wish they had this and that. And so they leave these relationships for the curiosity of what I could get or what if I would have done it better. So I think maybe not age, but I really think it could be where it's, a gender thing.
So would you say though that there's other factors that go into that prior to that peaking of curiosity? Like, for example, I would throw in there the friends that this chick is surrounding herself with. Usually women that hang around with other women that's not aligned with where she's supposed to be in her situation often at times influence her or is a bad influence on that woman moving like how she not supposed to be moving. And then also you throw into that the possibility that the relationship could be in turmoil, which then causes her to start evaluating what the possibilities were as a result of her not being happy within that situation or circumstance. So I wouldn't say that it's based off of curiosity, even in those situations that it does happen. I would say that it's based off of so many other factors that feed into ultimately that person exploring that curiosity or even exploring the thought of what if.
I agree. I agree. I'm sorry.
Really.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with Anton, but this is when I'm thinking about brothers, when you say, hey, I'm the majority, like I'm in a cipher where we're the majority, right? If you were to do a sample, not even a sample size, but if you were to think about just on your experience and your observation, if you took the entire state of Michigan, right, would you say that you're still the majority or the minority? Because one thing I think that you do and you talk about very well is that you set boundaries and you're a man of discipline and principle so that you don't even put yourself in positions to be tempted by certain things. But again, we're talking about, well, let me get you to answer that first. Do you think you're the majority or the minority if you thought about the entire state of Michigan?
The minority.
Yeah. And I think that when you're talking, because to me, it comes down to a mindset. And I think about what we're programmed and fed. And, I think Kay, I think you were talking about like, it doesn't matter. Well, I think Courtney, you were saying it doesn't matter whether you're old or young or anything like that. But I think the older that you get, some of that stuff just gets old. You know what I'm saying? And you're not as curious because you've been around the block a couple of times. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to skip ahead to any other topics or nothing like that. But just as a man, it gets played out, man. It's like, it's coachy. It's there. Like, I don't got to dip and dab in everything, Yeah,
but I think the thing that people also have to realize is that even beyond the love, marriage is a business. The whole idea of getting married and signing a contract means that you're in the business of being married. So when you start to think about all of the factors or all of the ways in which we're supposed to identify and highlight what marriage is, we would start to approach it differently. And then we would get different results because we'd understand that when you start to leverage the benefits of it and look at it from a business perspective and not just look at it from a love perspective, because everybody looks at it like cheating, love, how do I feel, all of that other type of stuff.
Yeah.
But when you start to factor in all of the other things that goes into it, usually people that raise their kids in 2-parent households have a better chance of raising kids that'll be much more successful than kids that are raised in 1-parent households. Right. When you talk about all of the financial benefits that goes along with being married, when you talk about having somebody to have your back, because 2 people are usually better than 1 in every situation. When you also factor in the idea that you can move and operate with somebody that has your best interest at heart 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, when you're doing it the right way and when you're communicating effectively, you'll start to see the benefits of marriage differently. And when I talk to guys and they say, well, I don't see the benefit of marriage, that's because they're going into it with a glass half empty mentality and that they don't understand how it will work for them, instead of going into it from the perspective of how can it work for me, then you're looking for the benefits that come along with it. So most people that get married are getting married for the wrong reasons. And that's why you see people always leading into it with how they look, how they act, all of this other type of stuff, instead of the things that actually should be the foundation of the marriage, such as friendship, spirituality, business interests, and then love comes along with it, especially when you factor in having kids, because you'll usually do things outside of how you feel and what's in the best interest of the group when you start to look at things not just from a love perspective, but also the business of marriage. And I know people don't like to talk about it, but the reality is that people that are married are usually way more successful. And you're going to have the anomalies. You're going to have the people that is in a toxic relationship and the kids suffer because the dad is beating up on the woman and all of this other type of stuff. Mm-hmm. But realistically, people that are in it for the right reasons and understand the idea behind marriage will be much more successful and wind up not getting divorced when they really factor it in and take it to heart exactly what it means, and even align themselves with the idea of what they say in their vows, till death do us part. Like, people just take that lightly. I never took it lightly, even when I was 22 years old, in sickness and in health. All that stuff means something to me. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think that people really take marriage itself as serious. And so when you're looking at all of the other stuff that go along with it, those are just factors and things that go into the devastation of it, which is a reflection of all of the statistics that you guys have. But realistically, if people took it serious and they was raised to think and look at marriage in the same way that my brothers was raised, my uncles was raised, even my father to a larger extent and his brothers, they would move differently. And I just look at marriage differently because I was raised differently, and I seen it in a whole nother view that I think is much different than what you would identify Chicago as the majority and how they see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, because I agree with you, Anton, and I think that it's two things that we're battling today, where you have the MGTOW movement, which is men going their own way, which they're like, I don't need any woman, I'm not getting married. Okay, and then you have women that have this fairy tale marriage, which means, you know, you better sweep me off my feet, I want my Prince Charming, and it's going to be fairy tales and sprinkles every single day in marriage. And so we're both, you know, there's two ends of a spectrum where we're not coming together, where we understand how marriage is and the reality of marriage. So how do we get out of the fairy tale and then men thinking they don't need marriage, and understanding how important it is, how it's important for two people to link up, to marry as a business, to, you know, create an empire, to have amazing kids with a mommy and a daddy in the house. How do we, you know, or begin to try to get these two sides to understand what reality is?
Well, I mean, but think about it. Like, there's cultures where, and I'm friends with a lot of people that are incredibly successful in their marriage, and they didn't even pick their spouse. Their parents picked their spouse.
Yeah.
There's people that do not get married, and the foundation of not is not how they feel about the person or whether or not they love them. Mm-hmm. They can grow and learn to love somebody, but that's not the foundation and the biggest thing or the biggest factor behind why they get married or not. So, you know, I know a lot of people like to live in their feelings, and they like to go by how they look at a person and whether or not that person make them feel great and mushy in the inside. But realistically, people need to look at marriage completely different, and they need to align themselves with other people that are successful in that arena, not people that just stay together for the sake of staying together. It can be incredibly successful. It's highly rewarding. Mm-hmm. I love it. And I would say that it's gotten better every single year, and it's so easy to be married, and it's so dope when you align yourself with the right person. And I would even encourage women to date y'all best friends. I don't understand the idea behind why women put dudes in the friend zone, and then they want to come back to these same dudes when they all washed up and wore out. Yo, this is the dude that probably that you should be aligned with, because he's the one that understands everything about you, the good and the bad. And stop aligning yourself based off of all of these superficial principles, because you can build and everything can be phenomenal, but you got to align with somebody that is moving in the same direction as you. You don't even keep the same friends as the people that don't move in the same direction as you. So why would you do that with regard to a person that you would consider a life partner? Let me get off my stoop. I'm gonna step off my stoop.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
So now, do people who marry early become curious? So I want to ask the question: how much does growth from the individual? So let's just say somebody hasn't matured yet. They don't really understand these things. Or, for example, like when I was in college, I seen people and I seen how they were when we in college, but then now they are completely different from how they were in college. They improve. They have money now. They've gotten in shape. So when people get married at an early age and they haven't reached their peak, I want to ask you guys, like, is that a factor in whether they become curious or not?
Yeah, I think 1000% is a fact. I mean, if you think about it, you really don't reach full maturity. At least for men, you don't reach full maturity really until you're about 25. That's when you start really kind of figuring out who you are, where you want to go, what you want to do, so on and so forth. That maturity piece plays a part in it. And there's some other variables too. Like I appreciate brothers when I hear Anton talk and when I hear other brothers, who have that village around them that supports them, right? And people to check them. And whether it's spiritual advisors, mentors, teachers, professors, close friends, whoever, that maturity piece is a huge factor because, again, if you're easily susceptible to every piece of information that comes across social media, TVs, movies, music, again, we're bombarded, and these younger people are bombarded with messages of infidelity, slut, hoe, this, that, and the third, whatever, trick, this, whatever. And so, some people are easily influenced, and that plays a part in a lot of their decision-making process. And I just push back on people who say that music and entertainment and movies and TV and propaganda, news reports, like all that stuff is not an influencer. It has a huge impact. If you're not mature enough to decipher what you're consuming and what you're digesting, it's going to influence your decisions and how you move. Right, wrong, and indifferent.
I appreciate the super chat, DF. He also had a question, which was, how do you minimize the risk involved, especially for men? Anybody want to answer that?
Anton, you want to hit it?
How do you minimize the risk involved?
What's the risk?
DF.
I mean, that's a very easy question.
I think
Well, number one, if you a dude that's already successful, and let's be real, most dudes is not already successful. Like we not even gonna cap and act like you already getting it. Most dudes is in debt. So it's not like you built up an empire and you got a whole lot to lose. All right. So that's factor number one. But for dudes that's already successful, it's a prenup. But for guys that get married very early, most of the time y'all both getting it out the mud anyway. So we both have a vested interest in this thing being successful. So I have no problem getting married early without a prenup because you're not coming into it with anything anyway. But for dudes that's incredibly successful, it's contracts for that. Get a prenuptial agreement, and put your best interests forward before you go into this thing, and don't ever let her trick you talking about I don't feel like that's love or trust. Okay, well then go ahead and walk right out the door. It's very easy. Get a prenuptial agreement and you be straight, fam.
And I would say for me, when I think about minimizing risk, I think about what you're saying, Anton. If you getting it out the mud and you getting it out the mud together, if that woman is with you while you shooting in the gym and things don't work out, of course you hope you live a long life, have a happy marriage and a relationship. But let's say things don't work out, man. If she helped you get it out the mud, fam, do whatever you got to do. It's fair compensation, man. Do whatever you got to do in the grand scheme of things. What does that mean? Especially if she helped you build that empire, But I think that if you're focused on leadership, purpose, and intent, and moving in a certain type of way, and investing in your relationship, everything is a risk. I mean, you can only minimize so much. You know what I'm saying? And you can only be accountable for who you are, your actions in that scenario.
I don't know about that part though, bro, because I will say that my chick very much moves based off of how I move. She is very much just a reflection of who I am. And so it's easy for me to be able to look at her and count on her to move in her purpose and align herself with my vision, because I deliver on what I say I'm a deliver on. I'm never the type of person that, like, I understand that I'm accountable for everything. I'm accountable for her. I'm accountable for my daughter, and everything that goes on in my sphere for everybody around me. I own that. I am absolutely responsible for everything that she do, I do, and all of that, because I understand that she is completely bought in. Now, if you got an unruly chick, right? You got a chick that ain't about nothing. That's a whole nother conversation. We've seen that on display on this channel very often. But if you got a chick that's 100% bought into who you are, you got a responsibility to deliver. Is that easy?
Would you also say, because this is what I was getting at, that's, you spoke to your leadership, and we talk about prophet, priest, and king of your home, neighborhood, so on and so forth. But would you say that you've also made that part of that investment is the deliverable? I agree with you, but you've also invested in that woman. And so there's a certain level of trust where she does follow your leadership.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, she invested in me also. I mean, she gave up her whole life to buy into this vision that we have. And so now I have a responsibility, especially to like her parents, to provide and protect for her and be the person that I'm supposed to be. And so it's easy. It's very easy to move in your purpose when you understand and you got somebody that buy into it.
Yeah.
But I just don't think a lot of people look at it from that perspective. They don't look at it from a responsibility perspective, in that you are very much responsible for every single person in your circle, especially when you say you. And this is the caveat, the part that we don't talk about as often when we talk about high value or all of these guys or whatever like that, because I'm very much on guys' side. I'm very much on dude's side, because I think that they've gotten the short end of the stick for an extended period of time at this point. But at the same time, you can't demand that a woman move any type of way unless what you supposed to be. If she buy in and she give every single thing that she got over to you, she give her body, she like the kids, she no longer subjected to her parents or whatever like that. If you got a chick that completely bought into it, you gotta do what you supposed to do and to ensure that unit is successful, fam. Like, that's your tribe, that's your troops. You got to protect them, you got to take care of them, you got to make sure that they're successful, the whole 9 yards. And she will follow you to the end of the earth if you deliver on what you say and she believe in you. So it's another side to the conversation of, guys are a specific type of way, or girls are a specific type of way. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do and you just trash, and we see these dudes got 100,000 baby mamas, I don't rock with that dude. We don't align. We not cool. You know what I'm saying? So I am very much against for holding women accountable. But in the same vein, I don't want no dude talking about he looking for a woman and you can't even house her. You need her to bring half the check to the door in order for y'all to survive. That's corny to me. I can't even rock with that.
Go ahead,
I have a question. Because with the last guy that asked a question, I do hear a lot about the risk of marriage, because again, divorce rate is higher amongst women as far as they're going to divorce you more. So the risk of being with a woman, she might divorce you, you might lose what you have, you might lose your kids, that risk. And then again, on the other end, I'm hearing, sometimes, specifically talking about Black women, they're not marriageable, which means they're not giving the men what they want to marry. So what weighs higher as far as why we're not marrying? Is it because the men are having a risk factor where they're like, I don't see the purpose of it because of all the risk? Or is it something with us where, Black men are saying, we're not giving you guys what you want, so I'm not going to marry you, even though I understand the risk? Which weighs heavier?
Anton, you on mute. You still on mute.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to give y'all an opportunity to answer.
You the married person on the panel. I don't think about.
But you're a man, Rella, so you tell me, why aren't you married?
I
How about that?
I don't think about what women aren't doing for men overall, or what women aren't doing for me, because I carry myself in a way where I don't even attract that in my space. The type of woman that I see, listen, when you're focused on becoming the man that you're supposed to be, you're focused on leadership and purpose and intent and becoming the prophet, priest, and king, right, of your family. When you're creating that space and building your empire, you don't attract certain energies and people to you. And when you do find yourself in that space, I don't know how to explain it, because I automatically, like, I don't align with it. Like, I don't associate with it. I could be in that space, like I could share that space for a moment, but that's not something that I'm feeding off of every day or entertaining or allowing to.
I don't know, Chicago. You attract everything when you're the right type of guy.
You said what?
You attract everything. You attract the good people, the bad people. You attract it all.
I'm sure it comes. That's what I'm saying. I'm sure it comes, but what I'm saying is you don't entertain it. That's the difference. You don't entertain it. You don't allow that to take root in your personal space. You protect that personal space. You protect that boundary. I don't associate with certain type of dudes. I really don't. I don't associate. I don't associate with certain type of women. Am I in the company of them at times? Are they in my home? Absolutely not. Am I invited to theirs? Maybe so. Am I going to entertain them and have conversations and talk about, whatever? Probably not. More than likely.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that guys, this is difficult because I very much look at women to a large extent also as the problem for why marriages, why people are not getting, why guys are choosing not to marry as much anymore. I mean, for a woman to say that, yo, I got my own, or I'm my own person and all of this other type of stuff. Well, what incentive is it for a guy to decide to want to embrace a woman or bring him into his fold when he taking on all of the responsibility, and she doesn't share in any of that risk or responsibility either? You know what I'm saying? Like you also got to factor in, and I know I'm getting off subject a little bit, but you also got to factor in that all of these laws are archaic, and when guys are going through the ringer and family court, and it's still shaped based off of the old things or the old ways in which women were subjected to, but then at the same time they expect men to still have that same perspective and provide for them. It doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't align, and I don't understand how women in the same term want the same things that they had back in the day, but are unwilling to submit themselves in the same way to these guys that they want it from. And at the same time, they act like being a regular guy ain't nothing no more. You know what I'm saying? They act like being a regular guy is trash. Like if you make, we had the same conversation. If you make $50,000, $60,000, then all of a sudden you ain't worth nothing. When did that become the narrative? When did that become the norm? So, I think women have outsized expectations. And then at the same time, they still want to be for the streets, to bring it back for this. They still want to have a whole phase. They still want to do what they want to do. And guys are just not putting up with that no more. They're not subjecting themselves to these type of women. And they, unless you're a simp, but other than that, they're not subjecting themselves to that no more.
Anton, you bring up a really interesting point about how women may not be as traditional, but they kind of want the benefits of the traditional relationship, right?
Yeah.
I think that applies both ways. I think a lot of times some men, of course not all, same thing with like what you said, it's not all, but I think sometimes men and women want the benefits of the traditional relationships, but they don't want to put in the work to get those benefits, right?
So give me an example on the other side.
I agree.
Okay. I'll give you an example. So a man might want a woman who, cooks, cleans, has everything ready for him. And of course, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm into traditional gender roles as it relates to like my relationship.
Okay.
I'm into that. But I'm saying, like, in the broader view of it, I think that some men want women to do all this submitting when they aren't even providing the framework where a woman can comfortably submit.
What's the framework? Give me the framework.
be like what you just said, being able to provide, being able to protect, being able to do all these things. That has to be in place. And a person might not have a problem finding a woman that's like you. Did you have a problem finding your wife? Like, were you like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to find somebody?
Nope.
Exactly. Because you provided that framework and you were that type of person, right?
But the dynamics
So
is different though, okay? Because y'all going to college now. Like you guys are wanting to compete for the same jobs. You want to compete for the same roles. Like you can't have a woman that says, okay, I want to be in a traditional marriage, but then I
But
want to
not be
make
traditional.
yeah, because you guys are no longer traditional in
Mm-mm.
how you're operating. You not coming home and saying, okay, this is a part of the pot. Y'all coming home and saying, I want a man that can take care of me just in case I don't want to work, but I want to work, and then I also want the same I want the same say so in the household. And this is a partnership versus me submitting to him. You can't have both. You got to pick one or the other. And if you
Yeah.
want to have a partnership, then it's a completely different type of relationship than me being a benevolent dictator in so many words, right? But I still have the best interest of our household, you know, in the forefront of my mind. So you can't
Yeah.
have it both ways. Either you want it the old way or you want it the new way. Me personally, I operate in the old way, but my relationship and everybody that I know, including my family, is way more successful in relationships than anybody I ever know. But then it's people today that say, well, this ain't 1950. We marry for love. Okay, well, keep getting divorced, keep
And
being
see
for the
how that works.
streets, keep getting remarried, keep doing all of the stuff that you want to do, and see how that gets you. Because this is the first generation of women that's growing old and dying alone. It's not working out at all.
Yeah, I agree. I think traditionally men have been consistent as far as them understanding that they are the provider, them being consistent as far as what they want in a woman. So it hasn't been much change as far as men understanding their role and what they want in a woman. What has changed is the women's role, which we were traditional, and now we think it's progression where now we're able to be like a man, quote unquote. But for me, I think it's regression because there's no progress. We're not only stagnant, we're doing worse as far as our gender. So men has been, hey, this is what I want. You want this traditional man, then I need you to be this traditional woman. We're fighting it.
So here's my real question then though. So let's just say hypothetically that a guy gets curious or somebody gets curious in a relationship, right? Because we very much talking about people that marry early or whatever. Do you consider that a deal breaker? And I'm kind of posing this question to the women, so to speak. If a guy steps out on y'all, is that a deal breaker? Are you walking away from the situation, right? If that's the case, considering that love, in my personal opinion, is not the foundation of what the marriage should be about.
I mean, I think in a marriage, I think marriage is forever. I think things happen within marriages. You got to work it out. Now, if there's some like ongoing just disrespect and abuse and things like that, of course, you should not stay. But in terms of like something happening in your marriage, I mean, I don't think that's a deal breaker necessarily. I mean, think about it. If someone's going to be together for 50, 60 years, like things are going to happen. So, I mean, whatever the things may be. For some people, it might be, I mean, different things for different people. But yeah, I don't think that one instance of something happening within a marriage should end it. Marriage is supposed to be forever.
Yeah, I'm marrying to death with an F. Death.
All right, I hear it.